Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. I'm doing pretty good myself, just hanging out here in the van. We've got lockdown laws and stuff in Australia at the moment, so most people are kind of staying home. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to make a new video. I might talk about the lockdown stuff in a later video, but today what I was thinking I could do is, since I've been living in this van for probably over 2 years now, I've learned quite a few things about van life while doing that. And I thought I could cover some of them in this video, so hopefully help out some people that are new to van life or thinking about getting into it. So anyway, that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. But before I do, I just want to let you know about the new channel that I've started. It's called Freedom in Mind, and it's aimed at helping people with chronic health problems. So things like autoimmune disease, chronic pain, anxiety, all that sort of stuff. I'll put links in the description for the channel, and I've also got a website attached to it. So if you're interested, then definitely go and check those out and subscribe. So like I was saying, I've lived in the van now for over 2 years, and lately I've been thinking about all the stuff that I've learned along the way, and some of those things would be useful to you. So the first thing I was thinking of was actually how when you first get into van life, and some of you might be able to relate, it's a real novelty. When I first got my first van, and the first few times I went out and slept in it on the side of the road or wherever I was parked, it was a real novelty. It felt weird, like it was very strange. Just okay, so all of a sudden I'm not living in a house anymore, I'm in my van and this is it. And you're just laying there at night and you can hear cars going past and people walking past and stuff, and it's quite bizarre. But as you get more and more used to it, eventually it just becomes like the new normal. And to me now, it's just, I've been doing it for that long that I don't even think about it. If anything, I kind of forget that that's a thing. And sometimes I'll have people come up to me, like friends of friends, and say, oh, so-and-so told me that you live in a van. And I'll go, well, yeah, I do, I suppose. And they've got a bunch of questions about it, because for them it's still new and the idea is this big novelty. To me, I'm just used to it. So that was one of the first things I thought of, is if you're just getting into van life, or if you've just started, or you're thinking about getting into it, it can seem a little bit strange, and you might not quite kind of know how to handle it, but you just get so used to it, it becomes normal. I can't imagine, I can, but it would be weird for me to go and live in a house now. Like if I just laid down in a bed in a house and was like, okay, this is where I live now, it would be strange. I think I'd miss the fact that I can just jump in the van and go to sleep wherever, whenever. After parties, you've had a few drinks, you just jump in the van and have a sleep. So yeah, the novelty factor is kind of an interesting one. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is temperature. And this can vary depending on your setup. Some people are better set up to handle certain conditions. But on the whole, I think for most people, they're going to find that living in a van, when it's hot, it's going to be really hot. And when it's cold, it's going to be really cold. Now, I've done a few things to my van, and I've learnt from my previous build, and I've improved on that one for this van. I've insulated the walls, and I've got 2 vents. So I have a vent at the back and a vent at the front of the van, and that helps to keep it cool. The insulation actually does also keep you warm when it's cold outside, but only to an extent. I don't have air conditioning, I don't have heating, I have a gas stove, so when I cook it warms up the van. But in Australia, I think that the cold is not so much a problem as the heat. In summer it's way too hot to be inside here in the middle of the day. Sometimes it's 40 degrees outside, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's very hot. And it's just too much. So, you could set it up better. You could have air conditioning, but then you've got to have somewhere to plug in and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, temperature, I think, is one of those things that you have to really be mindful of, depending on where you live. For someone that lives somewhere like Canada, for example, where it's cold, I've seen people install wood burning stoves in their van, or you can also get diesel heaters. That's something I thought of putting in this van, was a diesel heater for when it's cold. And then, yeah, like I said, air conditioning is only other real thing you can do for the, when it's really hot. But you need to be able to plug in somewhere or have a generator or something. I'll just show you quickly because I've already got other videos on these if you want to see in more detail, but these are my vents. So I've got, this one is at the front above the kitchen area, and then I've also got one at the back there, and between the two of them you can create a nice wind tunnel effect, and it really helps to get the air moving. I was talking about the insulation. You can just about see it through here, but that's the reflective sheeting that I've got, and then behind that is polyester. It's just like wall bats that you would normally put in a house, but polyester instead of fiberglass. So that's all in the walls and the ceiling, and that helps to control the temperature a bit. The only other thing that I've got is these window covers, and they really help. They're probably not the most important, but they're one of the most important things with heat transfer is the windows. And I learned that with my last van. My last van had windows all the way around, and I made sure I didn't do that again. But you still want to have a window that you can look out of, so with these, they've just got, I custom made them myself, and they've got reflective, what would you call it? I think it's sarking, I think they call it, inside, and I've just sewn it in to this material, and it folds up and out of the way, and it's got magnets that just clip to the metal around the edge there, and they work really well. Another thing that I've learned through living in the van for so long is the reaction that you get from people when you tell them that you live in a van. Now, for me, it's not something I advertise. I don't go around telling people, other than on YouTube, obviously, but when I meet people, I don't go and say, hey, I live in a van. But I'm open about it. So if someone says to me, where do you live? Then I just tell them. And I find that's the best way to be, because early on, you can often feel like you don't want to tell people because of their reaction. And I don't think that's a very good way to live, really. You just got to be authentic and be yourself. If you are doing something that makes you happy, then why does it matter what other people think? But in saying that, when you do tell them, you tend to get one of two responses. The less common response, but the one that people think they're going to get, is the, oh, you live in a van. Oh, so like, are you homeless? Or that's the sort of the response that a lot of people think they're going to get, and you do get that, but I find that's less common. The more common response that you're going to get is they're going to be really interested and ask a lot of questions, maybe want to see inside the van and all that sort of stuff, because it is kind of cool, and that's why we do it. And I think it plays on that adventurous side of people's minds, where you tell them that and they just think, oh, I didn't even know you could do that. Like, that's an option? I thought you just had to do what everyone else does. And I find it really interesting to talk to those people, because it blows their mind sometimes that there's actually another option. Like, you can live in a van if you want, or you could live in a boat. Like, whatever you want to do, you can do that. Another thing that you're going to learn if you live in a van for a while is how important it is to have your van set up how you need it. And particularly if you've had a couple of vans, you'll notice that over time, hopefully, you'll improve on original designs and you'll end up with something that suits you better. So my first van, I learned from a lot of mistakes. It was a great van, don't get me wrong, but there were just things that I didn't realize were going to be such a big deal, and I thought I could kind of make compromises on. And I learned that, yeah, it wasn't great for full-time living. Those sorts of things are going to be like the size of the van. You've got to make sure it's big enough to be able to do all the stuff that you want to do with it. The features, you're going to have things like fridge, sink, stove, all the insulation, the ventilation, all that sort of stuff. How much power you're going to need. So my last van had less than half the power supply that this one does in terms of batteries and solar and stuff. I've got a TV in this van. I didn't have one in the last van. I can stand up, so the height of the van, like, are you going to have like a tall van where you can stand up, or something that you can fit into little car parks? On a similar note, another thing that I've learned living in a van, which you'll probably learn too if you do it long enough, is the idea of compromise and what you can really compromise on. So when you first get started, I see a lot of people do it. A great example is when people install a sink into their van, like a kitchen sink. I've seen so many people install like a little bowl, or not even install it, just have a little bowl and say that's going to be where we wash our dishes, and it's great, you know, it's minimalist and it's all this sort of stuff and it's going to be fine. We're not going to do that anyway, we're going to eat out all the time and all this sort of stuff. The reality is compromises like that, you might realize down the road, are a pain in the butt, you know. So for me, my first van had a pretty good sink, but it wasn't in the best spot to access. You had to sit down to wash your dishes. So in this van, I put a deeper, bigger sink. I put an electric pump on the tap, so I don't have to actually pump the handle. And it's in a spot where I can stand up and wash my dishes and stuff. So that's just a small example, but you'll find that these little things that you think aren't going to be a big deal and it'll be fine, we'll just learn to live with it, become a huge pain in the butt later on. And it's better to try not to compromise as much as possible. It'll end up, you know, you'll enjoy the experience more the less you have to compromise. On the topic of compromise, I also wanted to talk about another thing that you'll learn living in a van is you should try and set the van up so that everything that you need to access regularly is easy to access, you know, like it would be at home if you lived in a house. You don't want to have to be folding your bed up out of the way, or, you know, kind of rearranging furniture or moving stuff, boxes and all that, just to get to something that you use regularly. So in this van, as opposed to my last van, I've designed it completely different. My last van, if I wanted to get to the little cupboards underneath my kitchen where I stored my pots and pans and things, I had to fold the bed out of the way, which seems like, because in my head I was thinking, oh no, because in the daytime it'll be in couch mode, and then nighttime I'll have already had dinner and everything, and then I'll fold the bed out. The reality is you don't want to be making your bed, like literally physically unfolding and creating a bed every day. Sometimes you just want to leave it there, but then if you want to get a pot or a pan out of the cupboard or something else that you've got stored under there, you've got to fold everything out of the way, and then you might have stuff on the bed, so you got to move that, then fold the bed up, then get the pan out, and then reverse that to put the pan back. You know, it sounds silly, but that's the reality, and it becomes a real frustrating experience. So in this van, the only things that I have stored in areas that I, you know, can't easily access, so I've got a couple of boxes under the bed, you might have seen in previous videos. They're things that I don't really need, and if I really need them, then yeah, I just fold the bed out of the way. But most of the time, sometimes I forget what's even in those boxes because I don't look in there very often. A perfect example of this would be my cupboard door that I have that leads under the kitchen. So up here you've got the kitchen and the sink and everything, and the cupboard door actually hinges over here, but when the bed is folded down, obviously you can see the bed is in the way. And I thought about that because I learned from my last van, I didn't want to have to fold the bed up and move that out of the way just to get under here, because I actually store things under here. So what I did instead is I put a second hinge in the middle, so it actually does fold all the way out, but when the bed's there, you just use the middle hinge and you can open up the door and you can access everything under here. So I've got my water, I've got, you know, kitchen stuff, I've got some pots and pans, I can get to my gas under here, but I can do all of it while the bed's still where it is. And that's just one of those examples of what I was talking about. That's it for this video though, guys, so hopefully you got something out of it and found it helpful. Don't forget to check out my new channel, Freedom in Mind. I'll put links in the description. Other than that, I'm just going to chill here and I'll see you next time.